So I'd like to know who did the schedule to compliment them on their sense of humor. The talk before mine was all about how the industry has turned anti-female. So I figured if they didn't have a female up here next, that we would probably have some kind of riot. So happy to help out. That is most definitely not what this talk is about, though. So let's talk about social engineering. So a little bit about me. So this is kind of a cool thing for me and a cool thing for the conference. So I was told, and I don't know if it's true because I haven't been here the whole 10 years, but this is the first security talk that you guys have had at PhillyETE. So that's kind of cool. I normally speak at security conferences, so it's kind of nice to get out and meet other people outside of the security space. Yes, we need to cross-pollinate some because there's only so much you can learn from this section of people. So a little bit about me. I'm a principal consultant for a company called SecureCon that basically makes me queen of the nerds. So we are a professional services company that's based out of the DC area. We do a lot of the ethical hacking type jobs. So that's a lot of not necessarily just application testing, but network testing. We do PBX testing for telephones, mobile apps. Some of the physical security stuff as well. So in addition to hacking all the things, we get to jump all the fences. It's a lot of fun. So I'm kind of the all trades person, I guess you could say. I would say jack of all trades, but then the lady from the other talk would get upset with me. So I don't have a good term for that right now. So I've been doing this for a while. I have a very cool job. I enjoy it very, very much. Co-authored a book last year on building a security awareness program. Seems to be kind of one of the things in this industry that's a little bit behind. All of us security people, we will come in on our security high horse and we will say, you got hacked because you don't have a good security awareness program. And then the client will say, how do I get one of those? And I didn't have a good resource to give them. So my co-author and I decided to make one. So that is our first attempt at spreading the good word. So it helped a lot of people out so far, and hopefully it continues to do so. One of my specialties, in addition to hacking all the things, is more of looking at the human element of security. So it doesn't matter how much we do with technology, it's always going to have a human involved somewhere in this process. So if you're only focused on the technology and not the human, you're missing over 50% of this security puzzle. So I'd like to talk a little bit today about what social engineering is to me and how we use it in our tests and how the bad guys use it for their not tests. So what is that exactly? So in the security community, that's tossed around quite a bit. Oh, well, I just social engineered them in this. I social engineered them out of this information. But what does it mean? So its most textbook definition is really persuading a person to provide some kind of information or to perform some kind of action to help an attacker. So that could mean a lot of things. That's a pretty broad spectrum right there. What kind of information are we talking about? I mean, normally I don't call people up and ask them for their social security number. Sometimes we do, but not very often. So the types of information that we're talking about are the pieces that we would use to simulate what they call a sophisticated cyber attack. Right? You see that in the news a lot, especially with all these recent breaches. I think Anthem is the latest one. They were a target of a sophisticated cyber attack. Well, what is that exactly? So sophisticated cyber attacks incorporate all of the elements of security, not just one or two, but all of them. And they hit in the gray areas where companies aren't so strong, like the human element. So the information that they're looking for isn't necessarily what you would consider sensitive. Some of it really obvious, right? If I call you up and ask you for your social, you're going to tell me no, or I hope you're going to tell me no. Or you can tell me someone else's social, and that would be okay too. Kind of troll the troll kind of thing. But what about stuff that's not so obvious? So what social engineers do is they take little pieces of information and they put them together to either build a persona, to either appear like they're from your company, or to appear like they're from a vendor or an outside trusted source. So what they're doing is they're taking these pieces of information and they're starting to build a story and develop a character very much like an actor in a play would. I have a theater background as well, which is kind of why social engineering just kind of fell into place for me. But why does it work? Why would somebody believe me if I call them or I walk up to the front desk of their building and tell them that I'm from this company or I'm a visiting employee? A lot of times it works because, bless you, the human folks want to be helpful, right? We're all human. We're taught the golden rule. Do unto others. If you see somebody struggling, normally, your urge is to help them. If you see somebody who is in some kind of trouble, this is especially true if you pretend to be a new employee. And if I'm looking for a piece of data, I'll tell somebody, I'm new, I'm gonna get in trouble if I can't get this done. My manager's really upset because your instinct is to want to help that person. So it works for a number of reasons, not just because folks are unaware of the threat, but because it uses the basic human makeup against you. That's kind of hard to teach. So in all of these awareness programs or the awareness training, you'll see 50 slides of plain text that everybody's just clicking through, right? We even got to the point where we had to take these for so many clients that we just wrote a program that will take them for us. So it will just click through the next button for us and kind of wait a little bit. It's randomized so that it's not always 3 seconds per slide. And somewhere in those 50 slides on the bottom and like little tiny text is, oh, by the way, watch out for social engineering attacks. And that's as deep as that ever goes. So if you're not educating folks on it, then you definitely can't protect against it because you don't know what it is and you're not telling anybody else what it is either. So that's what we're going to look at today. So I'm going to show you how we use these to perform more sophisticated attacks. And the examples that I have in here, this is a real client. So everything has been sanitized, not outing anybody here. They're not even in this state, but it is real data that we're using. So just kind of keep it in mind as we walk through some of this stuff. So we sort of know why it works, but what's the secret sauce of social engineering? The whole secret sauce of social engineering is to be able to play that role well enough to convince you so that if I ask you where conference room C is, you just tell me, oh, it's the second door on the right. You don't think about your answer, you don't think about me or why I need to know, and you forget me as soon as I walk away. So there are lots of psychological pieces in there, but we won't go into those because I want you to stay awake. It is after lunch now, so try to keep that light. It's called a fight or flight response. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can Google that little piece. There's tons of articles out there about how it works, but it's basically the brain's internal BS meter. So when you're out there on the vendor floor, and I hope there aren't any vendors in here, and vendor A grabs you and says, hey man, I've got this perfect product that's gonna solve all of your problems. That little clutch that you felt in your stomach right now, like, ooh, that's fight or flight. Because you have to decide how it is that you want to get out of that situation. Whether you just take his card and say, yeah, I'll call you, or you just pretend like your phone rang and just walk away. It's the same response when attackers are trying to get into your network or if they're trying to get into your building. So who do I target? Like how does this work? It doesn't always work the same way, right? So here I am talking about security people and how we always give the same answers. So the standard security answer is, it depends. This one does depend. It depends on the actual company itself. It depends on what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not. Sometimes there are some restrictions that are put on there. It depends on who I can find. Who's out there? Who's the most public? Who can I find that works for that target company? What information can I get about them? And developers are usually one of my top targets. So kind of outing myself here a little bit. But developers are the perfect target for a few reasons. A, you're so event-driven, right? This version of the code is due this date, this date, this date. We have to do everything that we can do to get it done because that's the way that the development cycle is kind of evolved now. So more code, less time, more code, less time. You're not thinking so much about security because you're driven to code for results, not for security. So you're not always thinking about the worst in people like I am, occupational hazard. You're driven for performance, not for security. Usually, developers have some type of elevated privilege in the environment. So you might have local administrative rights to your host, or you might have access into the QA environment or the FQT or some other areas of the environment that not everybody in the company would have. So that's kind of the pecking order here. So you've got developers, you've got network people, network engineers, ops people, guys that make the routers work. Same problem. And non-technical folks. They don't necessarily understand the technology. They don't necessarily understand what that Java applet means when that box pops up. All they know is if they don't click allow, then they can't get to that page. That's a problem, not necessarily from the technical side, but from the educational side as well. So how do we get started on all this? This is where you would think that I would talk about some very underground, very good piece of intelligence that I go to. No. First step is always the company's website. What are you telling me that I can use against you? And it's just a different way of looking at things. So if I'm going to impersonate this company, or if I'm going to impersonate somebody who does business with this company, I obviously need to understand them. So that's step 0 in this process. Locations. All right, the bigger the company, the easier this is, because it's less likely that anybody will know anybody else. You try to get into a 15-person company, that's going to be much harder than a 500-person company, because everybody in that 15-person company knows each other. So if I try to do an attack where I impersonate Sally from accounting, they know Sally from accounting because she sits 2 cubes down. So all they have to do is look over their shoulder and say, Sally, what's this weird email you sent me? I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And then my attack has failed. But I don't know it's failed because I'm not actually there. So the larger the company, the easier it is. So let's pick on EY for a little while. I did not hack EY.com. I did not hack EY at all. But they're a very large company that specializes in tech. So this makes it somewhat of a prime target. They offer all kinds of services, not just technical, but accounting as well. Where are they located? So when I see this map as a social engineer, this is awesome. They're everywhere. So that means I can be from anywhere. I just need to make sure that if I'm pretending to be Sally from accounting, that Sally from accounting is not sitting in the same state or building as whoever it is that I'm targeting. So the larger the company, the easier it is to hide. Job postings. I love job postings. I think they give me so much information. Because if I'm going to create an attack that's specific to your organization, I'm not going to go out and just use some standard piece of code for an exploit. I'm going to make something that's tailored to your environment, to your hosts, and that's not going to get flagged by your antivirus. So I would need to find out what kind of antivirus the target's running, yes? That should be easy enough. And we can do a lot of this by looking at the jobs. In fingerprinting technologies without actually touching any technologies other than the website. So there's a little bit of research involved. I like to look for the keywords like infrastructure. Those are usually the jobs that tell me the most about the security controls that I want to get around. So these guys actually did a pretty decent job of sanitizing their job postings. So you see some interesting things here, but not really, right? Everybody uses Active Directory, almost. Everybody virtualizes to a point, almost. IDS, IPS, proxies, okay. Not really a lot of information, right? But where can I get a lot of information? You don't have to answer, it's okay. LinkedIn. Everybody's LinkedIn profile up to date? LinkedIn is the phone book of the internet for social engineers. Because if I can't find out what kind of technology EY.com is using from their website and their job postings, their current employees might tell me, but I can guarantee you their former employees will. Because they don't have any loyalty at that point, they're trying to get a job. So they're going to list all of the things that they've done and all of the skills that they have. Like this guy. I don't know this guy, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't like me after this presentation. But he was really nice enough to help me out, so I forgot to highlight some of these. But if you glance through it, right, you see DRAC and you see ILO. Okay, that tells me that they're using HP and they're using Dell and they're obviously using the out-of-band management spaces. Sweet. I'll keep that in mind for once I'm in the environment. I'll just start scanning for the ports that those use. We have a whole separate tool that just does DRAX things. It's great. But if you look toward the middle here, you'll see installation and configuration of antivirus software, Symantec. Perfect. So I didn't have to make any phone calls. I haven't aroused any suspicions at my target, because the only place I've went so far is their website and LinkedIn. We're not hacking, we're not dropping any tables, we're not abusing any code, we're GET requesting. So all we're doing right now is we're GET requesting, which is still legal for now. So if I have all this information about the technology, I need to start looking at how I'm going to package it for an attack next. So if I understand more of what's in the environment, now I need to understand who I might target. So if I'm going to start to create a phishing campaign, which is pretty typical in these sophisticated cyber attacks. Oh man, she got a picture of my air quotes, that's awesome. In these sophisticated cyber attacks, most of these are starting with a phishing email. Whether that company chooses to disclose that or not, almost all of these attacks start this way. We see it when we come in to do incident response afterwards. When we start finding the pieces of code from the payloads that have been dropped in the boxes, you can almost always match that up to some type of email that they've received and some kind of program that they have downloaded or some kind of link that they've clicked on. Who are the prime candidates to get these kinds of emails? Folks that are very public. So if I'm not going to target a dev and I'm not going to target a network admin right away, public-facing figures are usually pretty easy to get to click on things. It's their job to interface with the public. It's their job to read things that are sent to them. So that's where specific training comes back into that, and we touch on that in the book. Everybody's job duties are not the same, so you need to train them differently because the threat model is different. So how do we harvest all these email addresses? Pretty easy, right? So if we look on the website, we see some names. That's pretty cool. All I really need to know is the email format, though. So all I really need to know is that it's at ey.com. Google will tell me if that's true or not, if I use the wildcard searches enough. So all I need to know is just the formatting of how their email address works. Because once I know the format, I can get names from anywhere. I don't have to buy email addresses. I don't have to scrape websites to get them. The internet gives them to me because the internet is great. I actually have a buddy who works for Salesforce who bought data.com, which is also formerly known as Jigsaw. It's a sales tool to a point. I use it for a different purpose. So it has company profiles on most of the big players and a lot of the smaller ones as well. So it's kind enough to tell you how many people it has contact-wise in each department. So that's pretty awesome because they have a lot of people in the technology department. Like 556 of them. That's cool. I don't have to buy these. You can buy them with money, or you can buy them with credits that you get from uploading relevant data to other people's sites. All I need are the names, because I already know the email format at ey.com. So once I look at how the emails are formatted, whether that's first initial, last name dot last name, all I have to do is pull this down, a little bit of text editing, and I'm good to go. There's actually a tool built into some of the hacking suites. It's called Jigsaw, and it will go out and pull all of this down for you. I don't even have to code anything, which is great because I don't code. Where else can I find out who works at ey.com? Facebook's pretty cool. These are all people with open profiles too, so there are over 1,000 of them who don't all work in security. I was just about to say that they don't work in security, but the top one does. We'll just leave that alone. But anyway, there are lots of ways to get the names of people if you want to create your own attack list for mailing. Now, if I wanted to find out where their data center was, in addition to doing all the specialized searches and cross-referencing the jobs to the locations, sometimes all you have to do is check the news. Sometimes they'll publish an article that tells you, hey, we're building this huge data center in Alpharetta, which is a suburb of Atlanta. So a lot of times companies are giving away a lot more information than they think that they are. So there are people like me who take these pieces and use it against them. What are some other great places on the internet where we give away a lot of free data?
The switchboard type websites with phone numbers.
Oh, I love those. Those are great. I also like Twitter. Big Twitter fan. I've been on Twitter all day today, but in an official capacity. So there's a very cool API out there for Twitter location mapping. For folks who don't turn location services off on their phone, every time they tweet, their tweet is also geotagged. So this is a, don't judge me, it's a Bing API. It's one of the few times that I will use Bing, but it's worth it in this case. So if I'm going to pretend to be Sally from accounting, it would be really awesome to know if Sally from accounting was actually in the office that day that I was going to pretend to be her. So a lot of times, if you're actively tracking their social media accounts, like Twitter, you can find out where they are specifically when they tweet. So I'll know that she's not in the office that day because she told me. And it has a cool history, so I can see all the places that Sally has been and where she's tweeted from, and yeah, it's fun. Good for research. I'm from the DC area, like I mentioned earlier, so this is one in DC. I don't know where these people work. Maybe you guys do? I don't know. You're not even supposed to have phones in there, so I'm not exactly sure how this happened in the first place. But whoever tweeted that from the middle is going to be in some serious trouble later. So while it's a handful of slides worth of presenting, it takes quite a bit of time to gather that much data by yourself manually. But there are all kinds of great tools that will do it for you, one of which is called Maltego. So Maltego will basically automate everything that I just said in about 4 mouse clicks and the type of the domain. It's a little bit difficult to use at first, it's a little bit clunky, but if you give it the domain and you tell it, populate everything based on DNS records, social media profiles, business profiles, it will just go out and grab it all and dump it for you. So I don't even really have to go out to LinkedIn to find the people that work in DevOps, or I don't have to find the sales folks in LinkedIn because Maltego will find them for me. And it's very good at what it does. It does live social media tracking as well, so I can watch to see what's happening in the company that day based on their hashtags and based on their corporate account as well. So it does a lot of trending. This is actually from, I can't remember the town, in South Africa. It's basically 6 guys that developed this that work at a barn, literally. Their office is a converted barn. But law enforcement uses this to locate drug dealers in South Africa because of the way that it's able to make the connections between social media accounts. It will lead them right to the ringleader, I guess you could say, of the drug cartels. So very, very powerful tool, and it's free. Metadata. So NSA taught us a lot about metadata lately. That used to be a very hot thing. It's kind of cooled off from now. I think it's mostly because the breaches have taken some of the heat off of that. But it's still there. So metadata is very powerful because it tells us a lot of information, lots of stuff. Now, at first glance, this might not really look that important, but when you start taking the pieces of the puzzle that I discussed earlier, combining them with this kind of knowledge, then I can create the perfect storm of my attack. But parsing documents for metadata is boring, and it takes a lot of time. But there's a tool for that too. So FOCA is from a group in Spain. It is free. You point it at a domain, it will go out and grab all of the documents that are on that domain and its related domains. So if it finds some subdomains or ones that are linked, it will go ahead and pull those in as well. You download all the documents, it'll analyze all the metadata for you, and then dump it out in a really nice report. So from here, I can get a really good look at what kind of operating systems they're using. Are they Mac shop? Because that's going to take some custom coding on my part if I need to write an exploit and a payload that's Mac friendly. Not impossible, very much not impossible. But it will take some more time. What version of Office are they running? Probably a vulnerable one, probably an older one. The enterprise isn't as quick to update as some of the smaller companies. And back down into the operating system stuff there at the bottom, it'll give you a nice layout of patch levels, the usernames of whoever wrote the document. Sometimes it'll scrape some passwords. Lots of good information. And again, we've done all this fingerprinting with GET requests. Nothing else. Not hacking anything, just GET requests. So I have people ask me if this tool is legal, and it is because it doesn't do any manipulation, it doesn't do any kind of filter bypass. All it's doing is just downloading documents that these websites have posted for public access. So good stuff. So we have a lot of data. It's a lot of data to look at. Now comes the fun custom part of figuring out how we're going to put it all together. At this point, I may have 75% of the data that I need for an attack, and then there we go, an attack. I need more coffee. But I might need some other stuff. I might need to bring in the human element of things. Up until this point, I haven't actually spoken to anybody. Everything's been internet-based. So I may need to fill in the blanks by talking to some people if there's some technology that I don't understand yet. So the next few slides are from, like I'd mentioned, a previous client, fairly recent, very large corporation, very large and has a lot of data on a lot of people, larger than what the Anthem breach was. So these folks, well, they had a lot of the basics in place already. They were patched on everything looked pretty good. It was very easy to fingerprint their technologies, but back to the website again. So for reasons unknown to me, I'm not sure if they just forgot to take this down or they just thought it was good to leave that up. They put a page up about the VPN for employees. Hey guys, this is how you connect to the VPN. Click here to download the company VPN profile. This is internet facing. I haven't authenticated to anything. Click here to download the client. So now, from looking at the profile, I already know all the basics about how to get to the VPN server. The client tells me, all right, it's Cisco, that's pretty cool. We can work with this. And that also tells me that they're used to going here to get what they need. So this is a trusted site that their employees are taught to trust and to use, but it's really advertised to the world. So what do us hackers do? We use it to our advantage. So back to Twitter, we waited until the network admin was going to be out that Friday. Always wait till Friday. And then we use it for something really good, like we're upgrading the VPN concentrator and you need the new client by today or your VPN won't work anymore. Now, who did we send this to? We sent this to a guy in sales, a guy in DevOps, and a guy in network operations that did not work with the person that we pretended to send it from. That way that he wouldn't know Steve wasn't in the office that day because him and Steve don't work together directly. So you've got new VPN client, please download it from here. That HTTPS, that's real. So when we actually take the time to do this the right way, back to sophisticated attacks, I'm not just going to stand up the fake website based on what I've scraped from here. I'm going to purchase a domain that's extremely similar. Usually we just put a dash and a portal after, or a dash secure after whatever it is that we buy. And I'm going to buy the certificate, and I'm going to configure it properly so that when they click on it, in the little address bar, the little green lock is there. So it's safe. Now, I don't have to explain what this is to you guys, which is awesome. Usually I have to explain this. This is the only amount of sort of development experience that I have. This is the only thing I use Java for, is creating evil applets that embed my payload. We use Java for bad things. You guys probably use it for good, I don't know. So not that I would know, but in the state of Nevada, for $200, you can register a business. Once you register that business, you buy your own domain and you stand up your own website and you make your company website. And then for another $200, not that I would know, you can buy yourself a code signing certificate. So when the evil applet pops up, it's already signed. That makes it secure, right? It's signed. It looks like it's from the target company. It's signed by a company that's cleverly named, something like Verified Secure or Secure Applet or something like that. Something that will tie into the Java and hey, this is secure, because that's what will pop up when it says this has been signed by. So they see the word safe and they'll click run. If they click cancel, it'll just keep reloading every 5 seconds until they click run or close the tab. We're really bad people. Nothing is happening here. This is just an animated GIF. So the landing page, it sits on this animated GIF for 10 seconds, I think it is. We had to play with that a little bit, because if you make it last too long, then they're just going to close the window because they're impatient. So 5 to 10 seconds, it sits here, they watch the animated GIF. The payload's already executed based on the privileges of Java. Yeah, I know. Judge me all you want. The bad guys are going to use it too, so you might as well learn from me. And then it comes to this other little landing page that says, hey, you're good to go. No need to change anything else. Your VPN access is good. Sounds silly, but when we do this, we only send 3-4 emails tops. We're not sending out 700 emails. That's the easiest way to get caught. Spear phishing is all about very specific, very dedicated attacks to certain targets. So that's how we use the applet in the security community. So sorry if we've caused it shame. Let's talk about physical stuff. So these are some of my favorite attacks to do. If you're going to walk into somebody's secure building where there are guards with guns, you had better understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So if you're going to play that role, then you need to play that role very well. Because if you don't, you may be guests of the local police department for the evening. I've only had the cops called on me once. We didn't get arrested, but it was close. So how do we do that part? All right, so we're attacking the cyber side. How do we attack the physical side? Because in security, physical access is king. I don't really have to do all the stuff that I did if I can just walk into your building, plant my own little evil network box. They call them pwn plugs. They just look like power supplies, a little Ethernet port on the back. If I can just walk into the building and plant those after hours, or plant those while everybody is at lunch and walk back out, that's all I need. I don't necessarily want data, I want access so that I can just use it whenever I want to. So it doesn't matter if your cyber stuff is good, if your physical stuff is bad, then you're back to square one. So a lot of companies will ask us to do a physical assessment right along with all the cyber and the social stuff as well. So this is the same client, by the way. They have multiple locations. We're only going to look at one today. So how do we do that? Usually they'll give us an address of the target location, but nothing else. Just so that we know that we've confirmed the right one, especially if they have multiples, so that we're not going into the wrong building. All right, no client in their right mind is going to pay for me to go and travel on site and sit there for 3 weeks to do reconnaissance. So you have to figure out how to do it remotely so that you don't have to spend all the money. This is the only other time that I will use Bing. Bing Maps, believe it or not, if you haven't used it, has a very cool 3D view. So you got the street view, and then you've got the building view, and then you can do 3D and kind of twist it so you can see around the sides of some of the buildings. For me, that's important because I'm looking at things like parking areas, the number of doorways that are on the outside of the building, because those are probably the doorways that I want to watch, are the ones that are kind of tucked along the side or tucked into the back. I want to see where the smoking area is. So if I can do all of that without leaving my house in Virginia, I'm golden. The other point isn't just about the entry point, it's about finding where I'm going to stake out when I actually get there. So while these tools are great, they may be a little bit outdated. So what I see on Google and I see on Bing may not actually be there when I get there. So I need to pick out a few stakeout spots. Now what's kind of cool, back to Google, I feel better already. Google has incorporated a lot of traffic cameras into the maps. So traffic cameras are awesome because if you're looking at a major city, if your target's in a major city and it's within somewhere of these traffic cameras, I can just sit and watch all day long. Now, what am I looking for though? Like, why are we watching the traffic camera? This is a little bit boring. I want to see how the people flow of that building works. Do they all come in at 7:30? Do they all leave at 4? When does the cleaning crew come in? Can we see the lights go on and off in each floor at night? Some of these clients will be a tenant in a multi-tenant building, so I kind of need an idea of when the cleaning crew is going to be on which floor in case I need to use that as an attack avenue. So that's what we did in Chicago. So this client, like I mentioned before, they were a tenant, multi-tenant building. I forget which floor it was, very high floor. So they didn't own this building. And you'll find that this is true when it comes to not only commercial properties, but government properties as well. The companies themselves will be very, very good about keeping the details of their building kind of under wraps and being very careful about what kind of pictures end up on the internet. The owner of that building will not. That real estate company will rat you out every time because they want people to rent in their building, so they want to show you how beautiful it is. So our first step in looking at this facility, after we did all of the mapping and the traffic cameras and whatnot, was to see if there was any space available in the building. If I can get myself into that building under the guise of getting a tour as a potential client, I can walk around and I can ask questions and I can look at things without looking suspicious because I have a meeting, I have a reason to be there. So that's what we did. So we checked out their website. They had a few of the suites available, one of which happened to be right next to the suite that was our target. So we wanted to see that one, but we also asked to see a second one for a few reasons. A, so it doesn't look so suspicious that we're only looking at this one specific suite. And B, in hopes that if we needed a place to hide, if things went bad, we knew where the other empty suite was. So their website, because they're so proud of the building, they want everybody to rent there, they give you all kinds of cool details. So I don't know if they use zip cars in Philadelphia or not. Yeah, okay, very big thing in Chicago as well. DC is sorta, I mean, the traffic never moves, so you're better off on one of the bicycles that they rent. But this building actually brags about how they have a zip car service in the basement. And you can have 24/7 access to the zip car because it has a RFID transponder to open the garage. Awesome. Okay, good to know. It even tells you how to get to it. So that second picture there of the hallway, it's about how to get around the guard desk, to get down to the garage, to get to the zip car. So helpful, it's great. This other one, well, that looks like that's supposed to be a very impressive lobby and very scary guard that's standing there. The picture of the card reader tells me all that I need to know from the attacker's perspective. So we're going to talk about RFID in a few minutes here. Doing some research by talking to the folks, the good folks who are renting out the building, their cleaning service is included. And they use ABM, which is, one of the most popular cleaning companies for commercial side in the country. So that's cool. We happened to get a nice shot of this guy having a smoke on one of the traffic cameras. That's why it's not very good quality. Enough to see that he was wearing an ABM jacket. Cintas is one of the largest uniform suppliers for cleaning services in the country, including ABM. So I couldn't find a good patch on the internet, so I just made my own. So I had to learn how to use the iron, which was hard all in itself. You can get 20 of these blank patches off Amazon for like $1. So that's what we did. So we took some of the printable iron-on template paper for the printer, printed out the ABM logo. I learned how to use the iron, sorta, and took it to the cleaners, paid them $2 to sew the patch on, and we now have ABM uniforms. So if we wanted to go under that guise, we could. You kind of have to learn to just roll with whatever happens when you get there, though. So you bring a lot of stuff, but you don't always use it. Let's talk about RFID. I love RFID. So I've been seeing a lot of name badges, not these. Oh, I had to take mine off. Not the conference badges, but your actual card that you use for work. So I've seen a lot of those dangling on belt loops and things today. Please don't wear those outside of the office because they're big flags for people like me. So this little device is an RFID research tool that is designed to dump the contents of those cards for research purposes. I research things differently than other people do. I'm sure that some people use this for very valid purposes, but I don't. It's about the size of an SSD hard drive, but it also needs power and an antenna. So it's a little bit clunky to do this without looking really obvious. So some of the guys on our team, because their arms are long, they'll put the Proxmark in a jacket pocket and the power supply in another pocket and then run the cable down their arm. The antenna is about the size of a CD, so they can keep their hand over it and disguise it. I can't though, because my arms are short, my hands are small. So I had to come up with some different ideas for this. So this is my RFID binder of doom. From the outside, it looks just like a regular binder. But on the inside, it's got some Velcro and it holds all of the Proxmark pieces together. So the Proxmark is there on the bottom. The power supply on the top there is just one of those like $20 ones from Best Buy for charging a cell phone. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And then on the other side is the antenna. So that's the antenna there. It fits into a CD holder because they're about the same size. So you can carry this around and get close enough to those dangling ID cards to get a nice read. But the leather in the binder prevented good power from getting to the card, so it wasn't very reliable. So we went to option B. This was kind of out of desperation. I don't know who invented the GridIt, but the GridIt is amazing. It's meant to hold all of your cables and little things in your bag so that you don't have to dig for your Mac adapters and stuff. But it holds the Proxmark pieces perfectly. Holds all the cables in place and everything. So how we dealt with this was we took this and we stuck it inside of a laptop sleeve so that when we were out and about on the street close to the Target building, we can just kind of swing the laptop sleeve around, get kind of close to the people that are wearing the right kind of ID cards. This is Chicago, so the read range on this antenna is not very big, right? So it's pretty awkward trying to get that close to somebody's badge. Much harder once you try to do it yourself than watching somebody else do it. Those are out of order. So we came up with a better solution. This is not my design. This is designed by the guys at Bishop Fox. That's another consulting company. So this is basically just like the small reader that we saw in the earlier picture, but it's for a parking garage. So it's about a foot square. I did not bring it with me. Okay, I'm not stealing anybody's card data. Nothing up my sleeve, nothing in my bag. But on the inside, it's been modified to just continually read the cards. The buzzer has been turned off so it doesn't beep every time it reads somebody's card. On the board there is an Arduino and a micro SD. So it will basically continually read. It'll flash the contents up on the display, but then it will write them to that micro SD. So when we got to Chicago, instead of having to get this close to somebody, we only needed to be this close to somebody to get the card data. Big, big difference. It's so much easier to get this close to somebody than this. So this is why we don't wear our ID cards outside of the building. A, because it advertises where we work, and B, because bad people like me will steal your card data. This is what you do about them. These RFID blocking card holders, they do work. Please get them. If you're in charge of getting these kind of things for your company, I would highly encourage you to do so. So we're in Chicago, we've done our tour, we know where our target is, we've got all of our card reads. This building was extra secure because it required a second card to get through the lobby and then another card to get into the office suite. But they were the same kind of card because they didn't want to install extra readers. So when we did the tour, we lifted the card ID of the lady that was from the actual building. So that's a 24/7 access card right there. So we rented the zip car that night, late that night. Rented the zip car, we had her card duplicated, drove into the parking garage. Everybody forgets about the freight elevator. I feel sorry for the freight elevator. Into the parking garage, over to the freight elevator, use the 24/7 access card to get the freight elevator up to the 18th floor or whatever it was. We had a whole set of duplicated cards that we had picked up from employees that had lunch close to the building, who wore the ones that didn't wear their cards carry these bright purple tote bags with the company logo on them. So it was really, really easy to tell who we needed to get close to. So not just ID cards, but be really careful about the company swag because you're advertising a lot more than you may know. So up to the 18th floor, used one of the cards until we got the right card. I think it was the third card. And once you're in, you're in. Everybody's gone. The cleaning crew had already been there. That's why we needed to know when the cleaning crew was going to be in, because we didn't want to be confronted. All the way in, all the way to their data center. But their data center door requires a PIN code to go with a card. That's not stored on the card, on that specific kind that they were using. It is on others. But that's okay. Because the data center door was so far in those layers of defense, they didn't really think it needed to be protected. So we just used one of the cards that didn't work for the credit card trick on the door. So you just put the card in there and just smack it really good, and the door popped open. So we called them from the phone that was inside of their own data center to let them know that we were done. They were not amused. But it's all about how you put the pieces together. So that's how I put the pieces together. We've got about 10 minutes, yeah, about 10 minutes. If you have questions or other things that you want to talk about, that's all I have. Nobody wants to ask any questions. Okay. Oh, she says you have to wait for the microphone too. I was supposed to say that, sorry.
Hi. Wow, that's loud.
Hello.
So you mentioned it briefly. Obviously, like you're like white hat security, and you're doing this. Probably a limited number of people in the organization know that you've been contracted to hack them and infiltrate them. If you do get into trouble, how does that work?
It depends on the trouble. So
like if the cops show up and you're sitting in jail overnight and you tell the cops, I swear we were hired by the company, they're probably not going to believe you. So how do you work around that?
How do we deal with that? So for the physical things, and I have slides for it, but I wasn't sure how quickly I was going to get through these, so I didn't put them all in there. Before we start the engagement, we have what's called a get out of jail free letter. Literally, that's what it's called. And it's basically just on the company letterhead. It says, this company, SecureCon, has hired these individuals, and it lists us by name by this department to perform this test. And then it'll give the dates as valid, and then the contact list of who the security guard is supposed to call if they see that letter. So we keep that letter in our back pocket and hope that we can talk our way out of it, but if we can't, if we get snagged by Rent-A-Cop, then we show Rent-A-Cop that letter before he shoots us.
Why should he believe it?
He shouldn't. So we've only had to help them out once or twice because we've only been approached once or twice. It's got the phone number of their boss in there. So when they look at it, I say, you should really call your boss. You should use the number that's on your contact list, though, because it might not be the same as that. Because a lot of people in my profession, they'll make fake numbers that go to burner phones that their buddies have. But I never quite understood that because I'm pretty sure that they're going to recognize their boss's voice. So if the person that answers the burner phone isn't their boss, that would be very obvious to me, but maybe not to others. So we've only needed to use it once that I can recall, and we were digging under a fence. It's kind of like the children's book. If you can't go through it, you can't go over it, you go under it. This place is in the middle of nowhere. We had to leave the rental car about a mile back because it was on a one-lane gravel road. It was a backup control center. It was very well located, by the way. Like, I couldn't have chose a better place. It was like a bunker and everything. So we had to dig under the fence because I couldn't get over it. And the neighbor had called in and reported the rental car as suspicious because he thought it had been abandoned because it was newer and it had out-of-state tags. But none of the folks at the facility had been watching the cameras. So we were digging underneath this fence for like 2 hours in the snow. Like, I'm so over this at this point. And here comes the cruiser. I mean, it's midnight and we're in the middle of nowhere. And I see the spotlight going in the woods. I'm like, oh man. Okay, cool. Let's just call this done because I really want some coffee and some dry clothes. Because there were about 4 inches of snow on the ground. Like, I was just done. So my boss and my boss is in his 60s. We don't normally look like what you would consider bad, scary people that break into buildings. It just works for us. So we approach the cruiser, hands, dropping the shovels and trying to kind of scoot those out of the way. And the deputy leans out the window and says, "Is that your rental car up the road?" We're like, yeah. We're doing some work for this company. They hired us to test some things, and deputy's not interested. Yeah, okay. Can you fill out this stuff here? Because I gotta go. Okay. So we filled out the information and they left. So I looked at my boss and I said, I'm going back under the fence. But the lights had actually tipped off Rent-A-Cop that maybe he should wake up and come out and see what was going on outside. So when he approached us, we gave him the letter, said, you should really call your boss so that they know that we've been here. By the way, we're going to go fill in the big holes that we dug under your fence. And he said, what holes? We'd better show you. So we showed him, we filled in the holes. At this point, it's been like 4 hours, and I'm tired, I'm frozen. So we're walking back through the woods to get to the car. I'm dragging the shovel because I don't care anymore at this point. And the neighbor comes out as we're putting the shovels into the trunk of the car. He's, kind of looking around. He's like, well, I called your car in because I wasn't really sure. He said, I saw you guys go into the woods with shovels, and I watched The Sopranos. I'm not making that part up. And my boss looks at him and he said, well, what you don't know is that 3 of us went in, but only 2 of us came out. So that's the only time I've ever had to use my letter. I think we got one more. I don't know how much time we have.
Besides just telling employees to protect their ID cards when they leave the office, what other recommendations do you give to companies as far as the types of cards and readers and other things to use?
So it depends on what all you use the cards for. So some companies, they have to have the smart chip authentication for their machines. Others, they just want something that's a quick swipe kind of thing. I will tell you honestly that there is not a perfect non-hacked solution right now. There isn't a specific brand that I can say, please go buy X because X is the best. It really depends on the level of risk that you have in your environment. And I can recommend how to help mitigate that by layering some of the technologies and layering some of the defenses, but there's not one perfect card right now. It's the bad, scary news. But yeah, I do have, please drop me an email, I have cards or whatever, I'd be happy to talk about it. It gets a little bit nerdy, but it's a necessary nerdiness. Good? Oh, we got one more? Okay.
This one's pretty quick. Your talk was fantastic.
Thanks.
What would it, are you hiring? What does it take to become one of you?
One of me, oh man. I'm not sure my boss wants any more of me. I don't think our insurance can afford it. So the physical stuff I do probably 20-25% of the time. The rest of the time, it's very much like what I walked you through. Social engineering, application testing. So most of us have some kind of security background. Some of us have the ethical hacker certification. A lot of us have an ops background, which sounds a little bit surprising at first, but when you're making recommendations on how to fix things in the enterprise, you need to be able to give them a realistic solution. Like I can't say, this is bad, you should put unicorns in your data center to fix this, because it's just not feasible. So ops is good, security is better, but a mix of the two is king. That's the Cliff Notes version. But yeah, come grab one of my cards. We are hiring. And we do support remote workers, so.
I guess I'm wondering, it doesn't seem like anyone can actually be safe. Like there's always ways to exploit things. I'm wondering, especially in terms of the software side and all of the social engineering stuff, what do you recommend?
So it's all about layers. As generic as it sounds, it's all about layers. So it's not enough to just worry about software. It's not enough to worry about just the human, just the physical. There have to be layers and checks and balances. So that means if you're going to put monitoring in place, you actually have to look at it. And as silly as it sounds, we see companies that spend millions each year to have big, sexy monitoring centers, but they don't actually review any of the alerts that they get. So without looking at the defense detection mechanisms that you have in place, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. So it has to include everything, and not just the monitoring. There has to be policy as to, all right, I saw something bad, now what? What happens? So it's really about growing maturity in the organization. If you're smaller, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. Some of the hardest targets that I've ever tested have been companies of less than 200 people, just because it was easier for them to scale everything. It was easier for them to, and they were development companies. They were very much in the technical space. They understood the technology, they understood the humans, but they also knew how to react appropriately if they saw something that was not right. So that's the generic security, you gotta layer it answer. Awesome. All right, I'm getting the look. I think that's the look. So I will be around if you guys have questions, and thanks so much for coming out.